Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Easy English Spark channel. I'm thrilled to have you here today. If you're ready to boost your English listening and speaking skills, you're in the right place. Today, we'll explore some amazing tips and techniques to help you sound more natural and confident in your conversations. Plus, we'll dive into how stories and games can make learning fun and effective, all while enhancing your vocabulary. Let's light up your English journey and get started. Chapter 1: The Key to Mastering Words. Hi, I'm Selena. And in this chapter, we're going to explore one of the most important aspects of learning English: mastering vocabulary. When you're learning a new language, words are your building blocks. Without them, you can't communicate effectively. The more words you know, the easier it is to understand others and express your thoughts clearly. But let's face it, learning new words can sometimes feel like an uphill battle. Have you ever tried to learn a new word, only to forget it the very next day? It's frustrating, right? Well, I'm here to tell you that you're not alone. Every learner faces this challenge at some point. Whether you're a beginner or someone who's been studying English for a while, remembering new vocabulary can be tricky. The good news is that there are strategies you can use to make this process a lot easier. In fact, with the right approach, learning new words can be not only easier, but also fun. Now let's talk about why learning words is so important in the first place. Words are more than just symbols we use to communicate. They are the keys to understanding everything around us. When you learn a new word, it's like you've unlocked a new door to knowledge. You can express ideas more clearly, share your thoughts better, and connect with others in a deeper way. Think about it for a moment. When you're talking to someone in English, each word you use paints a picture in the other person's mind. If you have a larger vocabulary, you'll be able to paint clearer, more vivid pictures, and your communication will be more effective. But if you only know a small number of words, it's like you're trying to create a masterpiece with only a handful of colors. The more you learn, the more you're able to express yourself. So, why does it feel so hard to memorize new words? Sometimes there are several reasons, but one of the main challenges is that our brains are designed to remember things that grab our attention or evoke emotions. If a word doesn't seem interesting or useful to us, we might forget it very quickly. For example, if I say the word apple, you probably think of a red fruit. Maybe you even imagine taking a bite and tasting the crisp, juicy flavor. This is because you have a mental image of what an apple is, which makes the word more memorable. But what happens when we try to learn a word that doesn't come with such a clear, relatable image? That's when it gets difficult. When a word feels distant or abstract, our brains struggle to hold on to it. So, one of the first steps to remembering words more easily is to make them meaningful to you. If you can connect a word to something you already know, it will stick in your mind much better. For instance, instead of just memorizing the word mountain, picture a tall, snow-capped peak. Imagine the wind howling and the scent of fresh, crisp air. The more vivid and personal your mental picture, the easier it will be to recall the word later. Now, here's the interesting part. When you make learning vocabulary fun, you're more likely to remember the words in the long run. This isn't just about repeating words over and over again. It's about making those words come alive in your mind. When you associate emotions, stories, or even a little humor with a word, your brain will treat it like something more important and memorable. One technique that works really well for learning words is to connect them to something that excites you or sparks your interest. Think about it. If you love cooking, you're probably going to find it easier to remember words like recipe, ingredients, or spices. Why? Because these words connect to something you already care about. The same thing applies to anything that interests you. Whether it's sports, music, travel, or technology, connect the words you're learning to those interests. When you do that, your brain will put in more effort to retain those words, making the learning process feel more rewarding and enjoyable. Another great way to make words easier to remember is by creating a story around them. Let's take the word apple as an example again. Instead of just memorizing the word on its own, imagine a story where you're sitting under a tree in an orchard, reaching up to grab a shiny red apple. As you take a bite, the sweetness bursts in your mouth. Your mind will retain the word apple much better because it's tied to a vivid, personal image and a story. The more you practice this technique, the easier it will be to connect words to meaningful experiences. But let's not stop there. Words don't just exist in isolation. They are part of a larger system. A word might remind you of other words that are related to it. For example, if you know the word run, it's much easier to learn words like runner, running, or ran. These words belong to the same family, and once you learn one, you can build on that knowledge to learn others. Understanding word families and how words are connected is a great way to increase your vocabulary quickly and efficiently. Finally, remember that learning vocabulary isn't just about memorizing words. It's about using them. The more you practice using new words in sentences, conversations, and even writing, the more natural they will become. It's like planting seeds in your mind. The more care and attention you give to those seeds, the stronger and clearer they will grow. So, how can you get started? Begin with words that matter to you. Start small, and try to make learning new words a part of your daily routine. Read books, listen to podcasts, or watch videos in English. Use new words in conversations and writing, and don't be afraid to make mistakes. Mistakes are part of the learning process, and every time you use a new word, you're one step closer to mastering it. Remember, building your vocabulary is a journey. It takes time and practice, but with the right approach, you'll get better and better. Stay motivated, stay curious, and most importantly, have fun with the process. Because when you enjoy learning, you're more likely to keep going, and that's when the magic happens. I hope this chapter has given you some insights into how to start mastering new words. In the next chapter, we'll dive into some techniques that will help you remember words even more effectively. Stay tuned and keep practicing. Chapter 2. Why learning words feels challenging. Hello again. It's Selena, and in this chapter, we're going to talk about something that many of us face while learning a new language. Why learning words can feel so challenging. As exciting as it is to learn a new language, the process of building your vocabulary can sometimes feel frustrating, overwhelming, and slow. So, why does learning words seem so difficult, especially when we put in the effort? Let's dive into the reasons why this happens and uncover some insights that can help you overcome these challenges. One of the main reasons learning new words is challenging is simply because our brains are wired in a particular way. Have you ever heard the saying, "Use it or lose it"? Well, that's true when it comes to vocabulary. Our brains are designed to remember things that are meaningful, interesting, or emotionally significant. If a word doesn't catch our attention or doesn't seem important, it's easy to forget it. The challenge, therefore, is how to make new words stand out enough in our minds so that they're not quickly forgotten. Let's break this down a bit further. When you try to memorize a word, it's essentially like planting a seed in your memory. The problem is that without the right conditions, that seed might not grow into anything meaningful. Think about this. When you hear a new word, what happens in your brain? The first step is that your brain has to decide whether this word is worth remembering. If the word doesn't feel relevant to you, or if you don't feel any emotional connection to it, your brain might not make an effort to store it. It's like the brain's natural filtering process, where only the most engaging, interesting, or useful things get stored long term. For example, Imagine you're learning the word carrot. If you're not really interested in vegetables or cooking, you might find it hard to remember. But if you're someone who loves cooking or is learning about healthy foods, then carrot might stick in your mind more easily. Your brain is much more likely to retain words related to things you care about or use regularly in your life. Another reason that learning new words can feel difficult is that many of us struggle with the sheer amount of vocabulary there is to remember. In English alone, there are hundreds of thousands of words, and that doesn't even count slang or regional variations. Even if you focus only on the most common words, there's still so much to learn. It can feel like a never-ending task, and that can lead to a sense of overwhelm. This is especially true when you're learning words in context that don't seem to have an immediate or clear connection to your life. Furthermore, new words are often abstract, which can make them hard to remember. For instance, think of a word like opportunity. It's a concept, something abstract, not a tangible object you can see or touch. When words like this don't immediately make sense or don't have a vivid image attached to them, our brains can have a harder time recalling them. On the other hand, if I say the word dog, you probably picture a furry, playful animal running around. That image helps you remember the word easily. But abstract words don't work the same way. To retain them, you have to attach meaning or emotion to them, which is another layer of effort. Now, let's talk about how repetition fits into the puzzle. Repetition is crucial when learning vocabulary. But it's not just about repeating a word endlessly. Many learners mistakenly believe that saying a word over and over is enough to remember it. While repetition is essential, there's a limit to how much it helps if you're not using the word in meaningful ways. Think about it like this. Repeating a word without context is like trying to memorize a phone number without understanding what the numbers mean. It's just a string of information that doesn't hold any real significance in your mind. Another factor that makes learning words challenging is the process of connecting them to other words you already know. This is a skill that needs to be developed over time. For example, when you first hear a word, you have to figure out how it relates to other words you already know. Does it sound like a word you already know? Does it have a similar meaning or usage? Building these connections requires time, practice, and a bit of mental effort. But once you've made these connections, learning becomes much easier. Let's also not forget about how language is used in different contexts. Words can change meaning depending on how they're used in a sentence. For example, the word bank can refer to a financial institution, the side of a river, or even a place to store information. The challenge here is understanding not only what the word means, but also how it functions in different contexts. That's another layer of complexity that adds to the difficulty of learning new vocabulary. And then there's the issue of motivation. Sometimes, learning new words can feel like a chore, especially when progress feels slow. If you're not seeing results immediately, it can be hard to stay motivated. But the truth is, language learning is a long-term process. It takes consistent effort, and it requires patience. There's no shortcut to fluency, and every word you learn is a step closer to reaching your goals. But here's the key takeaway. The fact that learning words feels challenging is completely normal. Everyone who has ever learned a new language has faced the same struggles. What matters is how you approach these challenges. You can turn them into opportunities by finding ways to make learning fun and meaningful. Instead of just memorizing words, try connecting them to things that interest you. Use them in conversations, write sentences with them, or even create stories around them. This makes them more memorable and more likely to stick. In the next chapter, we'll explore techniques that can help you tackle these challenges and make learning new words easier and more enjoyable. But for now, remember that the process is gradual. Don't be discouraged if you don't remember every word right away. Your brain is working hard to make connections, and with the right strategies, you'll see improvements. Keep going, stay motivated, and most importantly, have fun with the journey. Chapter 3: The Power of Interest in Learning Vocabulary. Hello, it's Selena again, and in this chapter we're going to dive deep into the power of interest when it comes to learning vocabulary. If you've ever felt frustrated while learning new words, or if you've ever asked yourself why some words stick in your mind while others slip away, you're not alone. The truth is, the key to making vocabulary stick lies in how much interest you bring to the process. Interest plays a major role in how well we remember words. Our brains are wired to pay more attention to things that we find interesting or meaningful. When we're genuinely curious about something, we invest more energy into learning about it, and that extra mental effort helps the information stay with us. So, if you want to make words easier to remember, one of the best strategies is to connect them to things that matter to you, things that excite you, or things that are part of your daily life. Now, let's explore why interest makes learning vocabulary so much more effective. We all know that language learning can sometimes feel like a never-ending task. There are so many words to remember, and the process can feel slow and overwhelming. But when you make learning fun and connect words to topics you're passionate about the process becomes enjoyable and the words naturally start to stick. Why? Because you're not just memorizing random words, you're connecting them to your experiences, your feelings, and your interests. This makes them much more memorable. Take a moment to think about your own life. What are some things you're passionate about? Do you love cooking? Perhaps you enjoy reading? Or maybe you're into sports, music, or travel. Whatever your interests may be, they can become the key to unlocking a deeper understanding of new words. Let me explain. Let's start with something simple: cooking. If you're passionate about cooking, think about how much easier it would be for you to remember words related to food, like ingredients, recipe, or spices. If you enjoy cooking, those words are meaningful to you because they are directly tied to something you already care about. You don't need to memorize them in isolation. Instead, you are learning them as part of a broader interest that excites you. This is how you can approach vocabulary in any area of life. If you love traveling, you might find it easier to remember words related to places, transportation, and activities. Words like airport, passport, mountain, or hotel will naturally stick with you because they relate to your travel experiences. In this way, you're using your passion to fuel your learning. On the other hand, if you're trying to learn words that don't connect to something you care about, it can feel much harder. For instance, learning the word skeleton might not mean much to someone who isn't interested in biology or anatomy. But if you're someone who loves science or has an interest in medicine, suddenly that word becomes more interesting, more relevant. When you connect new words to your personal interests, you create mental associations that make learning far easier. Let's break this down even further. When you learn a word that excites you, your brain releases dopamine, a neurotransmitter. That makes you feel good and helps you focus. This positive feeling reinforces the word in your memory. It's like your brain is saying, "This is something worth remembering." The more you can tap into things that you care about, the more likely you are to remember the vocabulary associated with them. Here's a great example. Imagine you're learning the word adventure. If you love going on adventures, whether it's hiking, traveling, or even trying new activities, you're more likely to remember the word because it has personal meaning to you. You might even imagine a specific adventure you've had in the past, like a trip to the mountains or an exciting road trip. That imagery and connection to a real experience make the word feel alive in your mind. Another powerful way to increase your interest in learning new words is to connect them to stories. Our brains are naturally drawn to stories. Why do you think children learn so many new words from bedtime stories and fairy tales? because stories are engaging and capture attention. If you can turn a word into a mini story or a scenario in your mind, it will stick much better. For example, if you're learning the word ocean, instead of simply memorizing it, imagine yourself walking on a beach, feeling the sand beneath your feet, and hearing the sound of the waves crashing. Your brain will create a much stronger memory of the word because you've connected it to an experience. Creating your own stories around new words can be a fun and effective way to remember them. Let's take the word brave as an example. Instead of just memorizing its definition, create a story in your mind where someone acts bravely. Maybe it's a character facing their fears or stepping up to help someone in need. The more vivid and detailed your story, the more likely it is that the word will stick. Now, let's talk about how you can engage your emotions in the process. Words that evoke emotions, whether positive or negative, are much more memorable. Think about your favorite words. Chances are, they are words that have strong emotional connections. Words like love, joy, or courage can spark feelings that help you remember them. But it's not just positive emotions. Sometimes words tied to negative feelings, like fear or sadness, can be just as memorable because they trigger a response in your brain. When you feel something about a word, whether it's excitement, happiness, or even sadness, it strengthens the memory. This emotional connection is what makes words more than just abstract pieces of information. They become part of your emotional experience, which is a powerful way to ensure that you'll remember them. Let's not forget about the power of creativity. Learning vocabulary doesn't have to be a boring, repetitive process. In fact, the more creative you are with your learning, the more fun it will be. You can draw pictures, write songs, or even create flashcards with images that make you smile. The more engaged you are, the more likely the word will stick. And the best part? You can keep making the process more fun as you go. It's all about finding ways to keep your interest alive. In conclusion, the power of interest cannot be overstated. When you are truly interested in something, your brain works harder to remember it. That's why it's so important to make learning vocabulary an enjoyable, personalized experience. Connect new words to things that matter to you, create stories around them, and engage your emotions. The more meaningful you make your vocabulary learning, the more successful you'll be. And don't forget to have fun. When you enjoy the learning process, the words will naturally stick and the journey will become much more rewarding. So, what are you passionate about? What interests you? Think about how you can connect your vocabulary learning to those things. I promise that if you start using your interests to fuel your learning, the results will amaze you. In the next chapter, we'll explore some techniques that can help you take your vocabulary learning to the next level. Stay tuned and keep having fun with the process. Chapter 4: Visualizing Words for Better Recall. Hi again, it's Selena, and in this chapter, we're going to explore one of the most powerful tools you can use to improve your vocabulary: visualization. If you've ever struggled to remember a new word, then this technique might just be the key to unlocking your memory. Visualization is not just about seeing pictures in your mind. It's about connecting words to vivid, memorable images that make those words easier to recall when you need them. This method taps into the brain's natural ability to remember images better than abstract words alone. Now, let's get into how and why visualization works. Our brains are wired to process images far more efficiently than text. In fact, studies have shown that we remember images more easily than words. This is because when you see an image, it's processed by the visual cortex, which is one of the most powerful and well-developed parts of your brain. Words, on the other hand, are processed differently. To remember a word, you have to create meaning for it. But with images, that meaning is immediately clear and accessible. So, what does this mean for your vocabulary learning? It means that when you connect a word to a picture or a mental image, your brain is much more likely to remember that word. Think about the word apple, for example. When I say apple, what comes to your mind? You probably see a red or green fruit, and maybe you even picture yourself taking a bite. You can almost taste its sweetness, right? This image makes the word more real, more tangible in your memory. It's not just a word floating in space. It's connected to something you can picture, and that connection makes the word much easier to recall later. Now, let's break down how visualization can be applied to new vocabulary. The first step is to form a mental image of the word. For example, let's say you're learning the word mountain. Instead of just repeating the word over and over, close your eyes and imagine a towering mountain covered in snow with the wind blowing through the trees. Picture yourself standing at the base, gazing up at the peak. Maybe you even hear the rustling of the leaves in the wind. The more vivid and detailed you make this mental image, the more likely you are to remember the word mountain. You've created an experience around it, not just a definition. The power of visualization lies in the details. The more vivid and specific you make your mental picture, the stronger the connection will be. Don't just imagine a generic image. Bring the word to life with all your senses. If you're learning the word ocean, don't just imagine water. Picture the waves crashing against the shore. Hear the sound of the ocean. Feel the cool breeze on your skin and see the vastness of the blue water stretching into the horizon. This full sensory experience locks the word into your mind because your brain associates the word ocean with a complete, memorable image. Let's take another example. Suppose you're learning the word happy. Instead of simply memorizing the definition of feeling good or joyful, try to connect it to a real memory or experience. Maybe you think of a time when you were laughing with friends. Or maybe you remember a moment when you were in a beautiful place, feeling at peace. By tying the word happy to an actual scene from your life, you create a much more vivid and memorable mental image. The key here is to make the image personal and meaningful to you. When you can relate a word to something you've seen, heard, or experienced, it becomes much easier to remember. This technique doesn't just apply to nouns either. You can use it for verbs and adjectives as well. For example, if you're learning the word run, picture yourself running through a park, feeling the wind rush past you as you move. Maybe you're running with a dog or with friends. The action of running becomes connected to a specific image in your mind, which makes it easier to recall later. It's important to note that emotions play a huge role in how well we remember words. Emotional experiences are processed more deeply by our brains, and this helps create stronger memories. For example, let's say you're learning the word fear. Instead of simply thinking about the definition, think of a time when you were genuinely scared. Maybe you were watching a scary movie, or you had a moment of anxiety. The emotions you felt during that time will help anchor the word fear in your memory. But what if you don't have a personal memory to associate with a word? Don't worry. You can still use creative visualization to create a mental image. Let's say you're learning a word like serene, which means calm or peaceful. If you've never had an experience that you can associate with serenity, try to create one. Imagine a calm lake at dawn, with the sun just starting to rise and the water so still that it looks like glass. Picture the colors of the sky shifting from pink to blue as the world wakes up. By creating this image, you're connecting the word serene to something that feels peaceful and calming. Now, let's talk about using visualization in combination with other techniques. While visualization is powerful on its own, combining it with other methods can make it even more effective. For instance, once you've visualized a word, you can practice saying it aloud or writing it down. Saying the word while you picture it in your mind strengthens the memory by involving both your visual and verbal memory systems. You can also try creating a short story using the word you visualized. The act of telling a story around the word reinforces your understanding. And recall. Another great strategy is to use flashcards with images. If you're learning new words, try creating flashcards with a picture on one side and the word on the other. When you look at the picture, try to say the word and recall the details of the image you've created in your mind. This method makes the word more tangible and ensures that you're not just learning the definition, but also forming a rich mental picture. Here's another tip. If you're learning a group of related words, try to visualize them together. For example, let's say you're learning words like forest, tree, leaf, bark, root. Instead of just learning them in isolation, try to imagine walking through a forest. Picture the tall trees, the leaves rustling in the wind, and the texture of the bark beneath your fingers. By visualizing the entire scene, you create a network of related words in your mind, making them easier to remember as a group. Let's summarize how to make visualization work for you. Form a mental image. Don't just think about the word. See it, feel it, and experience it in your mind. Add details. The more vivid and detailed your image, the stronger your connection to the word. Personalize it. Connect words to your own experiences or create fictional scenarios that feel real to you. Use emotions. Tie words to emotional experiences, as this helps make them stick. Combine with other techniques. Practice speaking, writing, or storytelling to reinforce what you've visualized. Visualization is a powerful tool that can make learning vocabulary much more effective. It transforms words from abstract concepts into memorable, concrete images that are easier to recall. The more you practice visualizing words, the more automatic the process will become. So, next time you're learning a new word, try to picture it vividly in your mind and watch how quickly it sticks with you. In the next chapter, we'll talk about how to connect new words with words you already know, another technique that will make your vocabulary grow faster. Stay tuned and keep visualizing those words. Chapter 5. Building Word Connections. Hello again, it's Selena, and welcome to Chapter 5. In this chapter, we're going to dive into an incredibly powerful technique for building your vocabulary: connecting words. If you've ever found yourself struggling to remember a word, or you've wondered why some words seem to stick while others don't, then this chapter is for you. The key to making vocabulary learning easier and more efficient lies in understanding how words are connected. By building these connections in your mind, you'll strengthen your vocabulary in ways you may not have thought about before. At its core, word connection is about recognizing how words relate to one another. When we connect a new word to a word we already know, we create a mental bridge that makes it easier for us to remember and use the new word. Our brains love patterns and associations, so when you learn a new word and connect it to something familiar, you're essentially wiring that word into your memory. But how does this work in practice? Let's explore a few ways to build these powerful word connections. Word families. Learning words together. The first and most natural way to build word connections is by exploring word families. A word family is a group of words that share the same root or base word. When you learn one word from a family, you can easily extend your knowledge to other related words. For example, if you already know the word happy, it's easy to expand your vocabulary by learning related words like happiness, happily, and even unhappy. All these words are linked because they share the same root, happy. By learning words in families, you don't have to memorize each word separately. Instead, you can learn several words at once, saving time and mental effort. Once you understand the root meaning of a word, you can use this knowledge to decipher other related words. Let's look at a few more examples. The root word act can lead to related words like action, actor, activity, and react. The root word create connects to words like creation, creative, creativity, and creator. By recognizing these patterns, you can build your vocabulary much faster and with less effort. Plus, understanding word families helps you understand how words function within sentences and in different contexts. Synonyms and antonyms. Expanding your vocabulary with similar and opposite words. Another powerful way to build word connections is by learning synonyms and antonyms. Synonyms are words that have similar meanings, and antonyms are words with opposite meanings. Learning these related words helps you express yourself more clearly and adds variety to your language. For example, if you learn the word big, you can connect it to synonyms like large, huge, gigantic, and massive. These words all have similar meanings, so you can choose the one that fits best in different contexts. Similarly, learning antonyms for words like happy, e.g., sad or unhappy, allows you to understand the opposite and use it when needed. Let's take a closer look at how learning synonyms and antonyms can help you. If you know the word strong, you can connect it to synonyms like powerful, muscular, tough, and antonyms like weak or fragile. Knowing the word fast leads you to synonyms like quick, speedy, and antonyms like slow, sluggish. By learning both synonyms and antonyms, you're building a network of words in your mind, and this network helps you recall the right word at the right time. It also improves your ability to describe things in a more precise way, making your communication richer and more varied. Prefixes and suffixes, unlocking the meaning of new words. Another excellent way to build word connections is by learning about prefixes and suffixes. A prefix is a group of letters added to the beginning of a word, while a suffix is added to the end. Understanding prefixes and suffixes allows you to break down unfamiliar words and figure out their meanings. For example, if you know the prefix un means not, you can apply this knowledge to words like unhappy, uncertain, or unpredictable. Similarly, if you know the suffix able means capable of, you can understand words like enjoyable, readable, or manageable. Let's take a look at some common prefixes and suffixes and how they can help you expand your vocabulary. Re means again, so learning the word revisit, to visit again, replay, to play again, and rethink, to think again, can give you a broader understanding of how to use words. Full means full of, so words like beautiful, hopeful, and joyful all have a positive, full of quality meaning. Less means without, so words like hopeless, careless, and fearless help you understand the absence of something. By learning prefixes and suffixes, you can recognize and understand a large number of words. It gives you the ability to decode new vocabulary and understand its meaning, even if you've never seen the word before. Word associations, creating mental links. Now let's talk about word associations. This is a technique where you link a new word to something you already know. The goal is to create a mental connection between the new word and something familiar, which makes the word easier to remember. Let's say you're learning the word bank. Instead of just memorizing it, think about all the different meanings and associations of the word. Bank could refer to a financial institution, but it could also mean the edge of a river or a place to store something. By associating the word bank with these different ideas, you create multiple mental connections, making it easier to remember the word in different contexts. You can also use visual imagery for word associations. For example, if you're learning the word butterfly, picture a colorful butterfly fluttering around in a garden. The more unique and vivid the image, the easier it will be to remember. Here's another example. Let's say you're learning the word astronaut. You might associate it with an image of someone wearing a spacesuit, floating in space, or exploring the moon. Creating a mental picture like this helps make the word astronaut more memorable and meaningful. Using word connections in Ibarv. Context. Putting it all together. Now that you've learned how to connect words using families, synonyms, antonyms, prefixes, suffixes, and associations, it's time to put everything into practice. The best way to solidify these connections is by using the words in real-life contexts. Try writing sentences with the new words you've learned. For example, if you've learned the word run, you might create sentences like, I run every morning to stay healthy. He's a fast runner. The dog ran after the ball. By using the words in sentences, you connect them to real-life situations, making them more relevant and easier to remember. You can also practice these connections through conversation. Try speaking to a friend, family member, or language partner, using the words you've learned. When you use new words in a meaningful conversation, it helps you strengthen the connections and reinforces your understanding of how the words are used in context. Conclusion. Keep building your vocabulary network. In this chapter, we've explored how building word connections can accelerate your vocabulary learning. By learning words in families, understanding synonyms and antonyms, breaking down words with prefixes and suffixes, and creating mental associations, you create a network of related words in your mind. This network not only makes learning more efficient, but it also helps you recall words more easily when you need them. Remember, the key is to keep practicing these techniques and actively seek out new words to connect. The more words you connect, the stronger and more expansive your vocabulary will become. In the next chapter, we'll discuss how to take these connections and use them in real-life situations, where you can practice your new words to make them a permanent part of your vocabulary. Keep building those connections, and your vocabulary will grow faster than you ever imagined. Chapter 6. Using words in real-life situations. Hello again, it's Selena, and welcome to Chapter 6. In this chapter, we're going to talk about one of the most important aspects of learning a new language, using words in real-life situations. If you want to make sure the vocabulary you've learned truly sticks, it's not enough to just memorize words or study them in isolation. You need to start using them in real conversations, writing, and daily activities. Only then will you be able to retain those words in the long run and truly integrate them into your language skills. So, why is it so important to use new words in real-life situations? Well, think about this. Imagine you've learned a new word, but you never actually use it in a sentence or a conversation. Over time, that word will begin to fade from your memory. It's like planting a seed in the ground but not watering it. The seed will eventually wither. The same thing happens with vocabulary. If you don't practice using new words, they won't stay with you for long. But here's the good news. Using new words in context doesn't have to be difficult or intimidating. In fact, there are plenty of simple, effective ways to get started. And the more you practice, the easier it will become. By the end of this chapter, you'll have some great tools in your toolkit to start using new words confidently in your everyday life. Using words in sentences. One of the first things you can do to start using new words is to practice using them in sentences. It's easy to memorize a word, but it's much more powerful when you can use it in context. When you create a sentence with a new word, you're connecting that word to a real-life scenario, making it more relevant and easier to remember. For example, let's say you're learning the word adventure. Instead of just memorizing the definition, create sentences with the word. You might say, I'm planning an adventure to the mountains next summer. This book is filled with exciting adventures that take place in outer space. She went on a solo adventure through the rainforest. As you practice making sentences, you reinforce the word's meaning and get more comfortable using it in different contexts. The more variety you add to your sentences, the better you'll understand how the word functions in different situations. Speaking with friends or language partners. Another great way to practice using new words is to speak them out loud. You can do this with a language partner, a tutor, a friend, or even by yourself. The act of speaking helps cement new words in your memory because it forces you to recall them actively. When you're in a conversation, try to use the new words you've learned as naturally as possible. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. It's perfectly normal to stumble when you're using new vocabulary, but the more you practice, the more confident you'll become. For example, let's say you're learning the word excited. During a conversation, you might say things like, I'm really excited about the concert next weekend. She was so excited to see her family after a long time. I can't wait for the weekend. I'm going on an exciting trip. When you use new words like this, you reinforce them in your mind, making them part of your everyday speech. If you don't have a conversation partner, you can still practice speaking to yourself. Describe what you're doing, your plans, or even your thoughts using the new vocabulary. For instance, if you're making dinner, you can say, I'm preparing a delicious meal, or this is going to be an exciting dish. Writing with new words. Writing is another excellent way to use new words in real-life situations. You Don't need to write long essays or stories every time. Just a few sentences each day can help you practice using the words in context. Plus, writing gives you the chance to think about how the words are used, which strengthens your understanding. 1 of the simplest ways to start is by keeping a journal. You can write about your day, your plans, or your thoughts, incorporating new vocabulary as you go. For example, if you're learning the word challenge, you might write, "Today I faced a challenge at work, but I solved it by staying calm and focused. One of the biggest challenges I've had this year was moving to a new city, but it's been a great adventure." Learning a new language is always a challenge, but I'm enjoying it. As you write, you'll begin to see how these new words fit naturally into your thoughts and sentences. The more you write, the easier it becomes to use the words in the correct way, and the better your vocabulary will grow. 4. Engaging with English media. A great way to expose yourself to new words in context is by consuming English media, whether that's reading books, watching movies, listening to podcasts, or even watching YouTube videos. These resources provide you with a natural way to see and hear how words are used in real-life conversations and situations. For instance, when you're reading a book or watching a movie, pay attention to how the characters use language. Try to notice new words and phrases that you can add to your own vocabulary. When you encounter a word you're learning, observe how it's used in sentences, and think about how you can use it in your own speech. Listening to English podcasts or audiobooks is another great way to hear words in context. This not only improves your vocabulary, but also helps with pronunciation, sentence structure, and fluency. When you hear a word used multiple times, it starts to feel more familiar and easier to recall. Practice with everyday situations. One of the most effective ways to use new words is by incorporating them into your everyday routine. This can be as simple as describing your actions or thoughts in English, even if you're just talking to yourself. Let's say you're learning the word clean. While you're cleaning the house, you can say, "I need to clean the kitchen before dinner. I'm going to clean my desk now because it's too messy." Cleaning feels good because everything looks neat and organized. By practicing in these real-life scenarios, you begin to use the words without even thinking about it. It becomes second nature. You can do this with any new word. Just find ways to incorporate it into your daily tasks and conversations. Using words in conversations with yourself. If you don't have a language partner, don't worry. You can still practice using new words by having conversations with yourself. It might sound a little strange at first, but it's actually a fantastic way to reinforce your vocabulary. When you're alone, you can practice speaking freely without any pressure. For example, if you're learning the word relax, you can say things like, I'm going to relax and watch a movie tonight. After a busy day, I need to relax and unwind. It feels great to relax in the park and enjoy the fresh air. These self-talk exercises help you become more comfortable with new vocabulary and can be a fun way to practice. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. Here's the most important piece of advice. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. Language learning is a process, and mistakes are part of that journey. Every time you use a word incorrectly or forget a word in conversation, you're learning and improving. The more you practice, the better you'll become. If you make a mistake, don't let it discourage you. Instead, view it as an opportunity to improve. With each mistake, you'll get closer to mastering the language, and the words you've learned will become a natural part of your vocabulary. Conclusion: make practice part of your daily routine. In this chapter, we've explored how using new words in real-life situations is crucial to retaining them. By practicing speaking, writing, and listening in natural contexts, you reinforce your vocabulary and make it a permanent part of your language skills. The more you practice, the more confident you'll become, and the easier it will be to recall the words when you need them. Remember, language learning is about consistent practice. Make it part of your daily routine, whether you're talking to others or just thinking to yourself. Don't worry about making mistakes. Just keep using those words and let them become part of your everyday life. The more you practice, the more fluent you'll become. In the next chapter, we'll talk about a technique that helps reinforce your vocabulary and keep it fresh. Repetition with a twist. Stay tuned and keep practicing using your new words in real-life situations. Chapter 7. The Power of Listening and Speaking. Hello, it's Selena, and welcome to Chapter 7. In this chapter, we're going to explore two of the most powerful tools for language learning: listening and speaking. While many people focus heavily on reading and writing, listening and speaking are just as important, if not more so, when it comes to mastering a language. If you want to use your new vocabulary naturally and fluently, you need to practice these skills regularly. The power of listening and speaking goes beyond just hearing or saying words. These skills allow you to internalize the language, understand its rhythm and flow, and use the vocabulary you've learned in real, everyday situations. By incorporating listening and speaking into your daily routine, you can take your language skills to the next level and truly make the words you've learned part of your active vocabulary. In this chapter, we'll break down the benefits of listening and speaking show you how to use these skills effectively, and provide you with practical strategies to improve both. Let's get started. The power of listening. Understanding how words are used in context. Listening is often an underappreciated skill in language learning. However, it's a key component that helps you understand the language and internalize vocabulary in its natural context. Listening to native speakers helps you grasp how words and phrases are used in everyday situations. It also helps you get used to the sounds and rhythm of the language, which improves your pronunciation and fluency. When you listen to English in context, whether through podcasts, movies, songs, or conversations, you begin to recognize patterns and structures in the language. You hear how words connect together in natural speech, how sentences are formed, and how different tones and inflections convey different meanings. This deepens your understanding of the language and helps you use new vocabulary appropriately. For example, let's say you've learned the word exciting. When you hear it used in a sentence like, "This new movie is so exciting," or "I'm excited about my upcoming vacation," you not only reinforce the word's meaning, but also hear how it's used in a sentence. You start to internalize its context, so when it's your turn to speak, you'll know how and when to use it. Listening also helps you with pronunciation. The more you listen to how native speakers pronounce words, the more you'll become attuned to the correct sounds. This is essential because the pronunciation of a word can sometimes be different from its written form, and the only way to learn the correct pronunciation is through listening. How to practice listening effectively. Podcasts and audiobooks. Find podcasts and audiobooks in English that interest you. The key is to choose topics that engage you, whether it's about history, science, travel, or any other area that excites you. This will keep you motivated to listen and will help you stay focused on the language. Movies and TV shows. Watching movies and TV shows is a fantastic way to hear how English is spoken in real-life situations. You can also use subtitles at first to help you follow along. Try to watch a variety of genres to hear different accents, vocabulary, and speech patterns. Music and songs. Songs are great because they often repeat certain phrases and words, helping to reinforce your vocabulary. Pay attention to the lyrics, try to sing along, and notice how the words are pronounced and used in the context of the song. Conversations. If possible, engage in conversations with native speakers or language partners. Listening to them speak in real time allows you to pick up new vocabulary, expressions, and pronunciations in a natural setting. By listening regularly, you'll start to hear English in a way that makes sense, which is crucial for understanding the language when others speak to you. The more you listen, the more comfortable and confident you'll become in understanding spoken English. The power of speaking, actively using your vocabulary. Now, let's talk about speaking. Speaking is the active use of language, and it's essential for improving your fluency. When you speak, you're not only practicing the words you've learned, but you're also developing the ability to use them in real conversations. Speaking helps you process language and solidify your understanding of vocabulary, grammar, and sentence structure. The great thing about speaking is that it forces you to think quickly and use the language spontaneously. It's one thing to memorize a word, but it's another to pull it out of your memory when you're actually having a conversation. This is why speaking regularly is so important. It trains your brain to retrieve and use the words you've learned in real time. For example, let's say you've learned the word delicious. If you're talking with a friend about your favorite food, you'll need to quickly recall that word and use it in a sentence, such as, "This pizza is absolutely delicious." By using the word in conversation, you not only reinforce its meaning, but also practice saying it in a way that sounds natural. When you speak, you're also working on your confidence. The more you practice, the more comfortable you'll become with using the language in real-life situations. Speaking helps you overcome the fear of making mistakes, which is a major barrier for many learners. The truth is, you'll make mistakes. It's a natural part of the learning process. The important thing is to keep speaking and keep practicing, because that's how you improve. How to practice speaking effectively. Find a speaking partner. If you can, find a language exchange partner or a tutor to practice with. Having someone to converse with allows you to practice speaking in a real conversational context. You can practice both casual conversations and more structured discussions around specific topics to help you build vocabulary and confidence. Talk to yourself. If you don't have someone to practice with, that's okay. You can still practice speaking by talking to yourself. Describe what you're doing, make plans for the day, or talk about your thoughts in English. The more you speak, the easier it will be to use new vocabulary naturally. Record yourself. A great way to improve your speaking is to record yourself. This allows you to hear your own pronunciation and sentence structure. You can listen to the recording and identify areas for improvement, such as mispronunciations or awkward phrasing. It's a simple way to monitor your progress. Practice speaking. In context. When you learn new vocabulary, practice using it in relevant situations. For instance, if you've learned the word neighborhood, you might describe your neighborhood. Talk about your neighbors or discuss what makes your area unique. By incorporating the new word into your conversation, you make it part of your active vocabulary. Listening and speaking in real-life situations. One of the most effective ways to improve your listening and speaking skills is by practicing them together in real-life situations. This could mean traveling to an English-speaking country, attending language exchange meetups, or simply interacting with English speakers in your community. The more you use listening and speaking together, the more natural the process will feel. When you're in a conversation, you'll naturally be listening to the other person while speaking yourself. The key is to stay engaged. Focus on what the other person is saying and respond using the vocabulary you've learned. This will help you improve both your understanding and your ability to express yourself. For example, imagine you're talking to a friend about your favorite movie. While listening to their opinion, you're also thinking about how to respond in English. You might say, "I loved the movie too. The acting was incredible, and the plot was so exciting." By practicing speaking and listening at the same time, you're able to keep the conversation flowing and build your fluency. The importance of regular practice. Just like with any skill, regular practice is key to improvement. If you only listen to English once in a while or speak every few weeks, you'll find it difficult to make progress. The more consistently you practice, the quicker you'll see results. Make it a habit to listen to English every day, whether it's through podcasts, movies, or music, and try to speak in English as often as possible. Overcoming challenges. It's normal to face challenges when it comes to listening and speaking, especially when you're just starting out. You might struggle to understand certain accents or find it difficult to find the right words in the middle of a conversation. Don't get discouraged. Remember that language learning is a process, and everyone faces these challenges. If you're having trouble understanding what someone is saying, don't be afraid to ask them to repeat or clarify. It's completely okay to make mistakes and ask for help along the way. With time and practice, your listening and speaking skills will improve, and you'll become more comfortable and confident in using the language. Conclusion: the key to fluency. In this chapter, we've explored how powerful listening and speaking are for mastering a language. Listening helps you understand how words are used in context, improves your pronunciation, and deepens your understanding of the language. Speaking, on the other hand, helps you actively use the vocabulary you've learned, boosts your confidence, and strengthens your fluency. Remember, the more you practice, the better you'll get. Try to incorporate listening and speaking into your daily routine. Whether it's listening to English media, talking to yourself, or having conversations with others, regular practice will help you reach your language goals faster. In the next chapter, we'll discuss how to use repetition in a creative way to keep your vocabulary fresh and long-lasting. Keep listening, keep speaking, and keep improving your language skills every day. Stay tuned. Chapter 8. Repetition. Making it fun. Hi, it's Selena, and welcome to Chapter 8. In this chapter, we're going to talk about a topic that is crucial to language learning: repetition. It's no secret that repetition is one of the most effective ways to remember new words and solidify them in your long-term memory. But here's the catch. Repeating words over and over in the same boring way can make the learning process feel tedious. That's why, in this chapter, we'll explore how you can turn repetition into a fun and engaging activity, so you actually look forward to practicing instead of dreading it. You've probably heard the saying, "Practice makes perfect," but I like to say, repetition makes permanent. Why? Because the more often you expose yourself to a word, phrase, or concept, the deeper that word gets ingrained in your memory. But the key to making repetition work for you is to keep it interesting and dynamic. So, let's dive in. I'll show you how to make repetition a fun and enjoyable part of your language learning routine, so it becomes something you want to do every day. Let's get started. The science of repetition. Before we jump into making repetition fun, let's quickly discuss why it works. Repetition works because our brains need to encounter information multiple times before it can move from our short-term memory to long-term memory. Think of it like watering a plant. If you only water the plant once and forget about it, it will dry up. But if you water it regularly, it grows stronger. The same principle applies to language learning. When you repeat a word, your brain strengthens the neural connections associated with that word. The more frequently you encounter a word in different contexts, the stronger your memory of that word becomes. This is especially true when you use spaced repetition, which we'll talk about later in this chapter. Spaced repetition helps ensure that you review the word just before you're about to forget it, which strengthens your long-term memory. However, as we all know, repetition can feel repetitive. So, the challenge is to find ways to make this process feel fresh and exciting, rather than monotonous. That's where the fun comes in. Make it a game, turn learning into play. One of the best ways to make repetition fun is to turn it into a game. We all love a good challenge, right? Gamifying your learning process not only makes it more enjoyable, but it also keeps you motivated. And the best part is, you can make these games as simple or as creative as you like. For example, let's say you've been learning a set of new vocabulary words. You can create a flashcard game to test your knowledge. Instead of just flipping through cards one by one, challenge yourself to beat your previous score or time yourself to see how quickly you can go through the deck. You can even try adding a reward system. For instance, every time you get a certain number of words correct in a row, treat yourself to a small reward, maybe a snack, a short break, or something that motivates you. Another fun game is word bingo. Create a bingo card filled with vocabulary words you've been learning. As you listen to podcasts, watch videos, or read books, cross off the words you hear. The goal is to fill up your bingo card over time, which gives you both a reason to keep listening to content and a fun way to keep track of your progress. You can also challenge yourself with word puzzles. There are many word puzzle games, like crossword puzzles or word searches, that are specifically designed for language learners. These games are not only fun, but also serve as a great way to review vocabulary. You can even create your own word puzzle using the words you've been learning and share it with friends or classmates. It's a fun way to reinforce the vocabulary while getting others involved. Spaced repetition. A powerful strategy for long-term memory. Now, let's talk about a more structured form of repetition that is highly effective. Spaced repetition. This method is based on the idea of reviewing information at increasing intervals of time to ensure it stays in your long-term memory. Spaced repetition works because it takes advantage of the brain's natural forgetting curve. When you learn a new word, you're likely to forget it if you don't review it. However, if you review the word shortly after learning it, you're more likely to remember it in the future. As time goes on, you should review the word less and less frequently as the memory becomes more stable. This technique helps you retain words without overwhelming you with constant repetition. There are several tools and apps that use spaced repetition, such as Anki, Quizlet, and Memrise. These apps automatically schedule reviews for you, so you don't have to worry about when to practice. The system does it for you, making the process simple and effective. For example, let's say you learn a new word today. With spaced repetition, you might review it tomorrow, then a few days later, then a week later, and so on. Over time, the word becomes part of your long-term memory, and you won't need to review it as often. This system is scientifically proven to improve memory retention and is a game changer when it comes to language learning. Creative repetition methods. Flashcards with a twist. Flashcards are one of the most popular tools for repetition, but let's make them a bit more interesting. Instead of using simple, plain flashcards, try adding a twist to make them more engaging. You can create interactive flashcards that include pictures, sounds, or even videos. For example, instead of just writing the word mountain on one side, add a picture of a mountain or a short video of a mountain scene. Seeing the visual will help you remember the word better. You could also record yourself saying the word and its definition, so when you flip the card, you hear it as well as see it. Another idea is to use flashcard apps that offer interactive features like games, quizzes, or even social sharing. For example, apps like Quizlet let you create your own flashcards and practice them in a more dynamic, game-like environment. Some apps even offer quizzes and challenges that add an element of competition, which makes the repetition process more fun. You can also make it social by sharing your flashcards with a language partner or friend. Take turns quizzing each other and see who can recall the most words correctly. This adds an element of collaboration and fun competition while reinforcing your vocabulary. Repetition in context. Make it part of your daily life. Repetition doesn't have to be limited to structured activities like flashcards and games. You can make repetition part of your daily routine, which makes it less of a chore and more of a natural part of your life. For instance, if you've learned the word delicious, try using it throughout the day in different contexts. Maybe you're enjoying a tasty meal for lunch, so you can say, "This pasta is delicious." Or, if you're reading a recipe or reviewing a cooking video, you can use the word when you describe how the food looks or tastes. The more you use the word in real-life situations, the more it will become ingrained in your memory. You can also try journaling or writing short stories using the new words you've learned. Writing regularly is an excellent way to reinforce vocabulary while expressing your thoughts. Each time you write a new sentence or create a new story, you're giving yourself an opportunity to use the words you've been repeating in a creative, personalized way. Make repetition a habit. Incorporate it into your daily routine. The key to making repetition effective is consistency. The more you practice, the more words will stick in your long-term memory. So, make repetition a daily habit. Even just 5-10 minutes a day can make a huge difference in how well you retain new vocabulary. You don't need to dedicate hours of your day to repetition. It's the small, consistent efforts that pay off. Whether it's reviewing flashcards, listening to a podcast, or practicing your vocabulary during your commute, You can fit repetition into your day in small but meaningful ways. Conclusion. Keep it fun, keep it fresh. In this chapter, we've learned that repetition is the key to mastering vocabulary and retaining words long term. But we've also learned that repetition doesn't have to be boring. By turning repetition into a game, using spaced repetition, creating fun flashcards, and incorporating repetition into your daily routine, you can keep it engaging and enjoyable. The more you make repetition a fun and dynamic part of your learning process, the more likely you are to stay motivated and continue progressing. So, start today. Try one of these fun repetition techniques and make language learning something you look forward to every day. In the next chapter, we'll explore how to use stories and games to make learning even more enjoyable. Stay tuned and keep making your language learning process fun and effective. Chapter 9. Learning Through Stories and Games. Hello, it's Selena, and welcome to Chapter 9. In this chapter, we're going to explore two of the most enjoyable and effective ways to learn new vocabulary: stories and games. As you may have noticed by now, language learning isn't just about memorizing vocabulary words or practicing grammar rules. It's about engaging with the language in meaningful ways that make the learning process both enjoyable and memorable. And there's no better way to do that than through stories and games. Why stories and games? Well, both of these methods are powerful tools that allow you to experience language in its natural, exciting form. Stories give context to words, while games make repetition fun and competitive. Together, they create a dynamic and engaging learning environment that can accelerate your progress while keeping you motivated. Let's break down how you can use stories and games to enhance your language learning and make it a fun, immersive experience. The power of stories. Connecting words to real-life contexts. Stories are one of the oldest and most effective ways to learn and remember new words. This is because stories give words context. They transform abstract concepts into real experiences that our brains can easily connect to and recall. When you read or listen to a story, the new vocabulary becomes attached to emotions, situations, and characters. This makes it much easier to remember the words and use them in your own conversations. Think about it. When you read a novel or watch a movie, the characters' emotions, actions, and experiences help you understand the meaning of the words they use. If you're reading a story where a character is angry, for example, you can connect that word to the character's feelings, tone of voice, and actions, which makes it easier to remember the meaning of the word. Here's how stories can help you learn vocabulary more effectively. Contextual learning. Stories provide context for words, so you learn them the way they're actually used in everyday language. For example, the word celebrate takes on more meaning when you read about a character celebrating a birthday or a holiday. You'll remember the word because it's tied to an event and emotion. Emotional connection. Words associated with emotions are easier to remember because we tend to remember emotional experiences more vividly. If you're reading a story where a character feels joyful, you'll remember the word not just because of its definition, but because of the emotion it evokes in the character. Repetition through storytelling. Stories often repeat certain words and phrases, reinforcing vocabulary through context. When words are repeated in different situations within a story, they are cemented in your memory more effectively. So, how can you use stories to enhance your learning? How to use stories in your learning. Read books or short stories. Choose books or short stories at your level. Start with simple books if you're a beginner, and gradually move to more complex texts as you progress. As you read, underline or highlight new words. Afterward, look up their meanings and try to use them in your own sentences. Listen to audiobooks. If you're not much of a reader, try listening to audiobooks. Listening to a story allows you to hear the pronunciation, intonation, and rhythm of the language, which can improve your speaking and listening skills. Create your own stories. One of the best ways to make words stick is by creating your own stories. Take new vocabulary words and challenge yourself to weave them into a short story. The more creative and personal the story, the more memorable the words will become. Read aloud. Reading a story aloud is a great way to practice pronunciation, sentence structure, and fluency. Try to read with expression and emotion, just like an actor performing a script. This makes the language come alive and helps you remember words more easily. The magic of games, making vocabulary practice fun. Now, let's talk about games. If you've ever played a word game like Scrabble or a trivia game, you know how fun and engaging games can be. But did you know that games can also be a powerful tool for learning and reinforcing new vocabulary? Games turn repetition into a challenge, which makes the learning process more exciting and interactive. Whether you're playing alone or with others, games keep you engaged and motivated, and they provide a fun way to practice new words in a low-pressure environment. Games can be especially useful for spaced repetition, which we discussed in Chapter C. 8, helping you revisit and reinforce words over time. Plus, many games allow you to practice vocabulary in a way that's more natural and less forced, helping you internalize the words more effectively. Here's how games help in learning vocabulary. Engagement. Games are fun, and the more fun something is, the more motivated you are to continue. When you're playing a game, you're actively engaged with the language, and this keeps you focused on the learning process. Competition and rewards. Many games involve a competitive element, which encourages you to improve and perform better. Whether you're racing against the clock or competing with a friend, games push you to reach new levels and reward you for your efforts. Memory reinforcement. Games often repeat words or phrases in different contexts, which helps reinforce vocabulary. The more times you encounter a word in different situations, the better you'll remember it. How to use games to boost your learning. Word search and crossword puzzles. These classic games are great for reinforcing vocabulary. You can find puzzles online or create your own. Use a set of vocabulary words you're learning and incorporate them into your word search or crossword puzzle. This is a great way to practice spelling, meaning, and word recall. Flashcard games. Flashcards are a simple but effective tool for learning vocabulary, and they can be turned into a fun game. Use flashcards with pictures, words, or both. Test yourself to see how many you can recall in a set amount of time, or turn it into a memory game by matching words with their meanings. Trivia games. Trivia games are perfect for testing your knowledge of vocabulary in a competitive setting. You can create your own trivia questions based on the words you've been learning, or you can play trivia games with friends or language partners. Scrabble or Boggle. These word games are great for practicing spelling and word formation. Scrabble forces you to think about new words in a creative way, while Boggle challenges you to form as many words as possible from a set of letters. Both games encourage you to use words in new contexts and reinforce your vocabulary. Online language games. There are many websites and apps designed specifically for language learners, offering games that test vocabulary, grammar, and listening skills. Apps like Duolingo, Memrise, and Babbel have gamified language learning, making it fun and interactive. Combining stories and games for maximum learning. The best part? You don't have to choose between stories and games. You can use both in your learning process. Combining the two methods allows you to reinforce what you've learned through different formats and create a well-rounded learning experience. For example, after reading a story or listening to an audiobook, you can create a game based on the vocabulary you encountered. Maybe you can play a vocabulary quiz with a friend or challenge yourself to remember key phrases from the story. Alternatively, you could create flashcards or a word search with words from the story you just read. Here's a fun idea. Create a language learning challenge using both stories and games. For example, you could commit to learning a certain number of new words from a book, then turn those words into flashcards or a trivia game. This approach not only makes learning more engaging, but also gives you tangible goals to work toward. Keeping it fun and rewarding. Language learning can sometimes feel like a long journey, but with the right mindset and approach, it can be incredibly enjoyable. By incorporating stories and games into your routine, you can make your learning experience more interactive and rewarding. The goal is to keep the process fun, lighthearted, and exciting so that you stay motivated and continue progressing. Remember, the more you enjoy the learning process, the easier it will be to stick with it. So, make it a habit to include stories and games in your daily practice. The more you engage with the language in creative ways, the more likely you are to retain the new vocabulary and use it naturally. Conclusion. Let the fun begin. In this chapter, we've seen how stories and games can elevate your language learning experience. Stories give context to words and make them memorable by tying them to emotions and real-life situations, while games turn repetition into an enjoyable challenge. Both methods are incredibly effective for reinforcing vocabulary and improving language skills in a fun and engaging way. Now, it's time to get creative. Start incorporating stories and games into your daily routine. Read books, listen to audiobooks, play word games, and make learning feel like a fun adventure rather than a chore. The more you practice through stories and games, the more you'll find yourself enjoying the learning process. And before you know it, your vocabulary and language skills will improve faster than you ever thought possible. In the next chapter, we'll wrap up the journey with a final look at how to keep your learning progress consistent and enjoyable. But for now, let the stories and games begin. Happy learning. Chapter 10. The Joy of Learning and Sharing. Hello, it's Selena, and welcome to the final chapter of our journey together. In this chapter, we're going to explore the true joy of learning and how sharing that learning experience with others can deepen your understanding, boost your motivation, and make the entire process more enjoyable. If you've been following along in the previous chapters, you've learned powerful techniques for mastering vocabulary, from repetition to using words in context, from listening to speaking. But now, we're going to take it a step further by talking about something that can transform your entire approach to learning: sharing what you've learned. Learning a new language is a process that takes time, effort, and consistency. But let's not forget that it should also be fun. After all, language is about connecting with others, expressing your ideas, and sharing your thoughts. So why not bring the same spirit of joy to your learning process? Sharing your knowledge not only helps reinforce your own learning, but it also creates a sense of community, builds relationships, and encourages collaboration. This chapter is all about finding joy in both the learning process and the act of sharing with others. Let's dive into how learning and sharing can work together to make your language learning journey more enjoyable and rewarding. The joy of learning. Why language learning should be fun. First, let's talk about the joy of learning itself. Learning a new language doesn't have to be a chore. In fact, it can be one of the most exciting and fulfilling experiences you can have. The process of learning new words, understanding how they fit together, and then using them to express yourself can bring a sense of accomplishment and pride. But the key to enjoying this journey is to approach learning with curiosity, excitement, and an open mind. Language is like a puzzle. You take different pieces, words, phrases, grammar, and put them together to create something meaningful. The process of solving that puzzle and expressing yourself more clearly in a new language can be incredibly rewarding. However, it's important to remember that learning should be fun. The more joy you find in the process, the more likely you are to stick with it. Here's how you can make learning fun. Focus on topics you love. If you enjoy traveling, learning vocabulary related to different countries and cultures can be exciting. If you're into cooking, learn food-related vocabulary. When you connect language learning to your personal interests, it becomes much more enjoyable and meaningful. Make it interactive. Use language learning games, quizzes, and apps that challenge you in a fun way. These tools can make repetition less monotonous and help reinforce vocabulary while keeping things fresh. Celebrate small wins. Language learning is a journey, and every small milestone, whether it's learning a new word, having your first conversation, or understanding a song in English, should be celebrated. Each of these achievements moves you closer to your goal, and recognizing them boosts motivation. By focusing on enjoyment and maintaining a positive attitude, you'll be more motivated to continue your language learning journey. The power of sharing knowledge. Now let's talk about the power of sharing what you've learned. Sharing your language skills doesn't just help others, it also reinforces your own learning and deepens your understanding. When you share your knowledge, whether through teaching, writing, or simply discussing new words and ideas with others, you solidify the concepts in your mind and gain a greater sense of accomplishment. One of the most effective ways to learn is by teaching. Have you ever heard the saying, "The best way to learn something is to teach it"? Well, it's true. When you teach someone else, you have to explain the concept clearly and make sure you understand it yourself. This helps reinforce the material and makes it stick in your memory. For example, imagine you've learned a new word and you're excited to share it with someone. You can tell them the meaning of the word, use it in a sentence, and explain its context. As you're doing this, you're reinforcing the word in your own mind, making it even easier to remember for future use. Sharing doesn't always have to mean teaching in a formal setting, though. You can share what you've learned in small, everyday ways. Talking to friends. Next time you're talking with a friend who is also learning English, share some of the new words you've learned. Discuss the meanings, use them in context, and help each other practice. Creating content. If you love to write, start a blog, or share posts on social media about your language learning journey. You could write about the challenges you've faced, the words you've learned, and tips for others who are also on this journey. Starting a study group. Organize a study group with friends or fellow learners. You can practice vocabulary together, share ideas, and motivate each other to continue learning. By sharing what you've learned, you not only help others, but you also create a sense of accountability for yourself. When you share knowledge, it encourages you to continue learning, as you want to stay ahead and have something valuable to contribute. Building a learning community. One of the most powerful ways to make language learning enjoyable is by creating or joining a learning community. A community of like-minded individuals who are passionate about language learning can provide support, motivation, and inspiration. Being part of a community also means you don't have to face challenges alone. You can learn from each other, share resources, and celebrate successes together. There are so many ways to build or become part of a community. Join online forums or social media groups. Platforms like Facebook, Reddit, or language learning apps have communities of learners where you can share tips, ask questions, and practice together. Interacting with others in these communities can provide fresh perspectives and motivate you to keep going. Attend language meetups. If possible, attend local language meetups or events where you can practice speaking with others. These gatherings create opportunities for you to use your new vocabulary in a social setting, making learning fun and interactive. Participate in challenges. Many language learning communities host challenges or group activities that encourage everyone to practice together. For example, you could take part in a 30-day vocabulary challenge or a writing challenge, where you write a short passage each day using new vocabulary. These challenges help you stay motivated and add an element of excitement to your learning. Celebrating your progress with others. As you progress in your language learning journey, it's important to celebrate your accomplishments, not just on your own, but with others. Celebrating milestones makes the process more enjoyable and allows you to acknowledge how far you've come. Plus, when you share your progress with others, it encourages them to keep going too. Here are some ways to celebrate your progress. Share your achievements. Post about your language learning milestones on social media, in a group, or with friends. Whether it's mastering a new word, completing a learning challenge, or having a successful conversation in English, sharing these wins encourages others to celebrate with you. Reward yourself. Set personal rewards for achieving certain goals. For example, after learning 100 new words, treat yourself to something you enjoy. A nice meal, a day out, or even a small gift. This keeps the process fun and gives you something to look forward to. Reflect on your journey. Take time to look back at how much you've learned and reflect on the progress you've made. You could create a journal or a photo album to track your journey. This not only helps you see how far you've come, but also motivates you to keep pushing forward. 5. The lasting joy of language learning. At the heart of language learning is connection. When you learn a language, you're not just learning words. You're learning how to communicate with people from all over the world, sharing your thoughts, ideas, and experiences. And the joy of learning comes not just from the progress you make, but from the people you meet and the connections you form along the way. Learning a language is a lifelong journey. It's not about perfection. It's about enjoying the process and growing along the way. When you embrace the joy of learning and share that joy with others, you're setting yourself up for success. The language you're learning is not just a tool for communication. It's a doorway to new experiences, new friendships, and new opportunities. So, keep learning, keep sharing, and most importantly, keep having fun. The joy of learning is something that will stay with you for the rest of your life. In this chapter, we've talked about how learning and sharing go hand in hand. By finding joy in your learning and sharing that joy with others, you create a positive, rewarding experience that will keep you motivated and excited. Whether you're teaching others, practicing with a partner, or simply reflecting on your own progress, remember that language learning is a celebration of new knowledge, new connections, and new opportunities. Thank you for joining me on this journey. Keep learning, keep sharing, and never stop enjoying the process. Great work today! Every moment you spend practicing brings you closer to mastering your English listening and speaking skills. Remember, progress comes with patience and consistency. If this story inspired you or helped you in your learning journey, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Easy English Spark channel for more lessons and stories. Keep listening, keep speaking, and keep believing in your growth. I'll see you in the next video. Take care and keep shining.